Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm here with my friend whose also name is Jordan. He enjoys politics just like I do, and I thought it would be a good idea to kind of record a conversation and see where things go from there. I guess I'll ask about the main issue that's going on right now in the news, which is obviously the taking of Maduro. Um, so just to lay out briefly what happened a few days ago in the middle of the night, the Trump administration they launched a special military operation where they went in with like a dozen helicopters and went into the capital of Venezuela, Caracas, and they actually took Maduro out willingly or unwillingly. I don't really know. And actually, I guess that's let me ask you that. What do you think of the fact that we were able to get in and out of there without losing like a single helicopter? Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah, no, my guess would be that there was some sort of deal struck. That'd be my if I just had to make stuff up, that would be the thing that I think is most likely. Just there was some sort of deal struck either between Maduro himself or the administration around him, who felt that was the easiest way to go about things.
Yeah,
If there
and I
was a
mean,
desire for
sorry.
conflict, yeah, if there was a desire for conflict, it would have gone a lot worse.
Y- yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, I've been watching a few military analysts here and there kind of talking about the extraction in general. And, it is noted the lack of resistance that we got. And there's a few options that aren't necessarily that Maduro was in on it. I mean, for example, we did cut the electricity prior to this. And it's my understanding that we did something with the air defenses prior to going in. And finally, it's my understanding that our helicopters have some sort of like electronic devices that are able to, in some situations, um, basically prevent like the heat-seeking missiles from hitting them. But that's about as far as the justifications or like the logic behind that goes. And I mean, I looked it up, and Venezuela has like over 2,000 man pads. Like man portable rocket units that can like hit helicopter. So it's like even in the middle of the night, no matter. I mean, I can't imagine that like at least one helicopter didn't go down. But what's interesting to me is that, and I mean, you can take what Trump says with a grain of salt, but he said that he would be willing to send in a second wave if needed, and that's what he expected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know, man. I mean, could you imagine if they had sent a second wave and we're talking like, I don't know, seven downed helicopters in Caracas? That's got to be an impeach Trump or something. That's crazy, dog. But that goes to my point. It's like, do you think they would have taken that risk if it wasn't a sure thing?
How it went about and why it went so quick, not something I really have any ability to speak upon. The only real information I have is I watched a nice analysis of why it would be so challenging to put boots on the ground in Venezuela. It would actually be a very major task, which probably wouldn't go very well. But that's not what happened. Um, and beyond that, I have very little knowledge as to how it went down or why it went so fast.
So let's just talk about this from like a U.S. politics perspective and kind of. I mean, this is a very unilateral, like top-down administration, and all these things go through Trump. And so I'm just thinking, let's just, because we don't know for sure if this was a plan by Maduro to be extracted or not. For sure, it's up in the air, and so I'm just kind of thinking, Trump, do you think that he'd be willing to risk one or two helicopters going down to get Maduro? And if he's willing to risk that, why do you think he'd be willing to risk that? From a political point of view, I should say, because keep in mind that this is a huge this is a huge escalation from the Venezuela stuff. And I mean,
for sure. I mean, look, what the reason why Trump does stuff is the subject of many discussions from many people, and everyone has a different take. Um, so some people are doing it more from like the U.S. policy perspective. That kind of goes beyond Trump, and Trump is just one player amongst many. So there's the idea that it's just a matter of Venezuela is a player that works alongside China. China has a great influence with Venezuela and others in South America, and America wants to start cutting off China's access to various areas. Um, so that's kind of a general U.S. policy perspective um, that would kind of go outside of Trump. Trump may have taken it to a step further. Maybe generals brought up different plans, and Trump, just being Trump, wants to go with the big chest thumping version. But maybe any other president would have done something in that area just to start slowing down China's control. Who knows? Then there's the more Trump focused perspective of, well, maybe he's in it for oil. I mean that that could still be a U.S. policy perspective. U.S. always wants oil. Um, so Venezuela has it. They want to. I mean, Trump has spoken several times about the fact that Venezuela, what, decades ago, took control of various um, oil supplies that were controlled by U.S. companies, basically kicking them out. So Trump says that's unfair, and we're going to go and fix that. Um, Maybe that's why. Maybe it's a distraction from Epstein. Maybe, and so part that like is always in the back of my mind, because basically since the day he was elected, this has been in the back of my mind. Is I always think he's looking for ways to stop the elections. He wants to maintain power. He doesn't want that to go down. He did that in 2020 or 2021, early 2021, where he tried to stop himself from losing power. So that's kind of something I've always keep in the back of my mind of what can he do to actually stop elections, because that's not an easy thing to do. You can't. American elections are not centralized, so it's extremely difficult to prevent that. But maybe, just maybe, Trump thinks that if the United States is at war, he has more powers and tools and levers he can pull in order to prevent an election. Um, and like this is not even this is something he said out loud. So it's Trump. So you always wonder. There's always the part: is he joking? Is he not joking? Supporters will say he doesn't mean it. But during a sit down with Ukraine with Zelensky, you know, who has not had an election because in the constitution of Ukraine they don't have elections during wartime. Trump made a comment about how he could also stop elections if he was in war, which is not how the American Constitution works. But will he try it anyway? I wouldn't put it past him.
I mean, that's a great point. Trump is notorious for getting those earbugs that just kind of stick around when he hears something, it becomes just
Mm-hmm.
him for a little bit. And I mean, I mostly agree with you because, like you said, Trump, he is the main guy in in this government for sure. He has a lot of power, but he doesn't have all the power. And you know, the behemoth of institutions that is the US is going to drag any president in a certain direction just because of, there's a lot of moving pieces in the government. And,
Mm-hmm.
that being said, I mean, Marco Rubio is a great example. He's going to be kind of like a bulwark in the government, kind of being more liberal and I guess establishment. And I mean, I have no doubt that Trump's position towards Venezuela, and a lot of the things that he says, it comes from, if not Marco Rubio, from a similar strain, a similar like military strain. Um, or sorry, a particular strain of geopolitical thought is influencing Trump. But and I mean, I could also lump the oil into that, because I think that that directly plays into the geopolitics. But then there's the separate point of, well, what does Trump care about and why does he do these things? So I mean, I think that Trump has a smorgasbord of options that are presented to him by our government, such as Marco Rubio, and I mean, he's going to pick things, and they all happen to be relatively good liberal things because that's the country we are. So I mean, I'm with you that um, that a big reason that we're going in this direction is because it's something that Trump is being directionally aligned towards because of our institutions and stuff. Um, and the question, like I said just now, the question becomes, why does Trump care? And I think that that's where you mentioning the Epstein files comes into play. But before we
And
get into
that's
that,
something.
sorry.
That's something that I have. Like, I really don't know the good, what Trump is really good at is making it so that you really don't know where he stands on some stuff. Now, obviously, we know where Trump stands on the Epstein files because he's um, repeatedly said, "Why do you care about this? Why, if this was something he was excited about, you would know." Um, but in terms of whether it's just he's using it as a distraction, um, when um, you know, distraction from what? Because the whole thing is the majority of it's redacted. The few things that are there are um, they look bad, but they're defensible in the sense of like accusations versus evidence, right? So like as long as the claims are accusational of nature, there's going to be a lot of people who will just dismiss them, and I think that's all that Trump needs in order to kind of brush it away. The fact that it happened on a particular Epstein deadline, and that deadline, I believe, I actually saw is being postponed now. Um, speaks a little bit to probable cause, um, but at the same time, this is something that Trump's also been kind of working towards for months anyway. Um, Trump's been working the Venezuela line for quite some time, actually, because if you go back, I mean, he declared he used the War Measures Act against Venezuela. What, like 8 months ago? Some rough timeline. I'd have to double check that number, but it was a bit ago now, where he was using it against Venezuelan gangs, who he said were at war with the United States, in order to
Mhm.
basically speed up deportations. So that was something he directed at Venezuela way back now. And then you had the escalation over the last few months. Like this, there has been a steady progression to this point. So the fact that this event lined up with an Epstein event, is fishy. But his interest in Venezuela clearly goes, I think, beyond just an Epstein file. There is something, I think, larger than just that there. But I mean, there's so many other ways he could distract from Epstein. Um, he can just say stupid stuff, and he does that all the time. So I don't know. It's that's sort of the problem, is that you don't really know what he's getting at, and especially because like all the reasons they've given thus far, don't make any sense. Like they just the nonsensical explanations. It's not about drugs. If it were about drugs, like obviously he wouldn't have pardoned a major uh, narco terrorist leader of a
Oh,
country.
I love that term, bro. Narco terrorists. Great.
Yeah, like he kind of revealed his hand there.
Hmm.
If it were about drugs, yeah, Trump doesn't give a shit about drugs. Like he doesn't care. Because it's actually really crazy if you look back on his on the history of the things he says he cares about versus what he does. It's clear he doesn't care. Like for example, if you look at human trafficking, that's something that Trump talked about a lot in his first term. Um, and any success he had with human trafficking, and there were a few major events he took credit for in terms of crackdowns and people arrested. There were some big ones, but at the same time, he redirected a lot of resources away from human trafficking towards border control. Um, and the net effect probably was just an increase in human trafficking overall. And that's something that's actually escalated even more in this term. So, you don't trust. there's I don't think he actually cares about almost anything.
Hmm.
There's very little ideology the man actually has. He's not an ideological person. He's just a very egotistical person. It's really self interest. So really, the question becomes, how does it serve him? And drugs, I don't think they matter to him. In terms of like gangs, I don't think he cares. Again, it's just I don't think he cares about most things. I don't get the impression he does, because any effort you can make to actually crack down on these things, he does more showy stuff than he does actual um, stuff, and that's very intentional. He's a showman. He likes to show stuff. He likes to brag about success, um, and he's very good at that. Actually, he's very good at finding the win in anything he does and making that the star of his message. That's that. If like he has any talent, it's that. Um, how that then ties into what is motivating him, I don't know, and I really don't, because it depends on whatever he thinks is in his interest. So it's hard to tell. It honestly, it literally could just be, I think it'll look cool to take out Maduro, and that's it.
Hmm.
Like that really could just be his motivation. I think people will cheer for me if I do it. Guy loves to be cheered. He'll do
Yeah.
anything for that.
Yeah, and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said that, not only is he a showman, but he also finds the win in every situation. And something that's remarkable to me about him is that he finds something that's new and novel to do, to push the envelope a little bit more in one direction or another. Um and about him, like you said, I don't think I also don't think that he in a sense cares about anything. I think that you know when he does something, he does the most a performative version of it because he wants the a political advantage of it. Not necessarily, he doesn't actually care about the thing, right? But
Yeah,
it really makes you wonder because you do bring up some good points. Like for example, Venezuela has been going on for a while now. You said, you bring up a good point when you said that he used the War Powers Act. To was that when he declared those gangs as terrorists, or is that a different incident?
that was, yeah, it was that.
Okay, yeah. So I
Basically,
mean,
what he did is he claimed that the United States was under an invasion because Maduro was sending gangs to the
Hmm.
United States, blah 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 blah, blah
Oh,
for
right,
measures
right, right.
that.
This is ringing a bell now.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, technically, you because you have to actually be either at war or under an invasion to use the War Measures Act. Um, so he tried. So I guess he succeeded. I don't know. I don't.
Hmm.
I haven't been following every single court case that has occurred. So I'm assuming that that lived on. But for all I know, it
Yeah, I'm
didn't.
not sure if
I
that's been fully litigated yet. I don't. I'm not sure about that.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
no, I'm going to claim knowledge on that. But I remember at the time going, okay, that's clearly not an invasion.
yeah.
That is not what the founders thought of when they thought of an invasion. It's not just gangs are here, um, but that is
Well, I mean,
also
you kind
another
of pointed
element.
it. Well, you kind of pointed it out because, that's kind of in this term. That's the earliest example of him kind of putting Venezuela in the crosshairs, and I mean,
Yeah,
that's earlier than a lot of the Epstein stuff. And so, if you think that
yeah,
this only has to do with the Epstein stuff, I mean, like you said, there's prerequisites that even predate the Epstein stuff. And, actually, in his first term, Trump was also eyeballing Venezuela. I don't actually know the reason for it, but what's so fascinating, what's so fascinating about our strikes in Venezuela is that they kind of align a couple different positions. There's the anti-drug thing, and there's also the anti-immigration thing. Um, and then those kind of, in a sense, they most naturally build up into this Venezuela thing. And so there's an argument that, maybe this is kind of a long plan kind of thing. Um, and so I mean, here's what I'll say. I mean, I think that he's always been so I think that he's been ramping up escalation towards Venezuela in his rhetoric and stuff for a while. And I think that it just kind of in happenstance occurred that Venezuela is the target for when we need to escalate further. So I mean, it's not necessary that this has always been a game plan, but maybe in like summer, Trump was like, "Oh, you know what? We can go one step further." When the Epstein files become like an issue, something that one more thing that I'll say is that like this this extraction of Maduro, it took a few months to plan, and so the idea that this in itself was planned because of the Epstein deadline, that doesn't make sense. But it's important to understand that Trump executed this order on Christmas. So it's something that he had in his arsenal, kind of waiting for the right moment. And I mean, that could also be for the Venezuela thing as a whole. Maybe it was just the right happenstance for the right moment, and he pulled that trigger. But I mean,
yeah.
I think you're right that that all has to do with his own personal motivations. And you bring up a great point. I never even thought that maybe he could be invoking some sort of emergency to affect the 2026 elections.
But it's just a matter of if Trump wants to take the elections, if he wants to somehow rig it or fix it or make some way to ensure that he doesn't lose, um, the federal government has no actual control over elections in the United States. They are 50 separate independent elections. Each state runs their own election. So he has very little power over those in general. But one way or another, I can guarantee that he has a team of lawyers who are going through every option they can, trying to figure out a way in which he can go about it. And one thing, as soon as this whole thing with Venezuela started ramping up, one thought I was having is, does he think he can have more tools in his toolkit if he's at war? So that's kind of just an idea that's going on in my mind because he's already demonstrated back in 2021 that he is looking to alter outcomes of elections. So, and I mean, even in terms of running for a third term, which obviously is not legal. On the one hand, he's so old that like he could die next year and it wouldn't be a shock. On the other hand, only the good die young. So we he might still be around to try for uh, 2028. Who knows? Um, but it's something that I'm always considering. I'm very distrustful. I don't know how he can do it, if it's possible, but if it is, he has lawyers working on it. So it's just a concern to be aware of, I think.
Yeah, if anything, if Trump has shown us anything, is that he's able to do not only what we don't expect him to do, but things that we haven't even thought of. And I mean, when you bring up something has to be decentralized in all the the first thing that my mind jumps to is the National Guards. You know, I don't think I don't think it's going very well for him on the legal front on the National Guard situation. I think he's been relegated to DC at this point, but that's kind of the type of stuff that I'm kind of concerned about. ICE is another example. Who knows what they could do with
Yeah.
the
And I guess and the other thing I was thinking is like I guess he doesn't actually need to take control of 50 elections because if you could just take the swing states, that's all you really need, isn't it?
Well, sorry, are we talking the midterm or are we talking 2029 right now? 2028.
I mean, I guess either. Yeah, he would definitely want the to win these midterms because that will greatly affect what he can't do. But who knows at this point what he is going to try? I mean, he has for the 2026 he has 9 months left. It's November, so yeah. So we got he's 9 months. No, that's wrong. I'm tired. 11 months. That's how months work. Um,
In your
November
defense,
is
October is 10 for some reason when it should be 8.
yeah,
So
yeah. Like,
I never
it's just
got that.
well, I mean, it's because the calendar's changed a handful of times. So at one point, it made sense. But I mean, it's not just. I mean, September Sept is 7, Oct is 8,
It's a great point.
No is 9, and D Sec is 10. So I mean, it's actually over several months it works out. But I do
Well,
believe that
what I can tell you is that in third grade, when I was being taught the polygons, my teacher said, and that's why October is the 8th month of the year. And so for the last like 25 years, I've been thinking that October, it's been a perpetual issue with me. I've been thinking October is 8 for like my whole life.
I mean, it should be. Look,
It should
you
be.
look.
This is what
I'm
Trump should
saying
be
all
working on.
yeah, look, if what you want to do is you're going to add 2 months to the year, you really should add at the end. That way, like the line, the whole naming structure.
December is
10.
12. Wow.
Yeah, but it should be 10. Yeah, December is 12, but it should be 10.
And November. Okay. Yeah, this is making a lot of sense. Okay. Yeah.
2 hours later.
We just
That's
went
what
on
we
like
have
a
to do.
5 minute tangent on the months.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is so many good, great tangents to have. You can't give up a good tangent.
So yeah, so I mean he does so here's the thing, right? Yeah, he has 9 months, and when the
11
Epstein file 11 thank you, 11
months.
months. Yeah, so he has like 11 months left in his term, and I mean when the Epstein stuff was going on, I was thinking like, so how much worse could this it can't get any worse than this, right? And what if it doesn't get any worse than this? What if it just stays the same or gets better, and all of a sudden his polls start go, you want like the worst things to occur right before the election. And
Yep.
I mean, then the new year turns around, and I mean he's not disappointing me or letting me down. He is making it worse. I mean, as much as this might distract us from the Epstein files, at least we can say this is not a good look.
I mean, it's going to depend because I mean the question obviously is what's next. That's the biggest question. What comes next? Because The best case scenario for Trump is he declares victory right now and just stops. It's not the best case for Venezuela. I mean, there's a power vacuum now. The administration from Maduro is still there. They're not. It's not. The regime hasn't changed. It's still the same regime,
Yeah,
just
that's the thing. I
different
wouldn't even
guy.
call it. I wouldn't even call it a power vacuum. You know, like it's the exact same
Yeah, like
situation. We just leave right now. You know, I mean, honestly.
yeah. So like, if he leaves right now, nothing changes Venezuela. All the people who are cheering will be like, "Oh wait, what? What the fuck?"
Yeah,
So like, um, and then he walks away, declares victory, says everything is great now. Venezuela is so happy; they're cheering for him. They love him there now. And then maybe he strikes a small deal with the Venezuelan government to get some oil, just as a kind of okay, uh, you know, that'll get us off your backs. You don't have to worry about us anymore. You can move on. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that was the whole Maduro deal in the first place. Maybe he's made a deal with whoever's left, being like, "Hey, you give us that, you give us some oil, and we'll get off your backs." Maybe that's what happened.
true.
The
Maybe the deal is that we'll get Maduro. He'll spend the rest of his life in the prison with just like well. You know, not a bad
yeah.
deal.
So Venezuela won't be happy. Maduro was a bad guy. The
Mm.
administration was a bad administration. People are miserable over there. That is not a good outcome for Venezuela. But honestly, there is no good outcome for Venezuela. This is not going to be a positive thing for them, because that's the best case scenario, basically all around. I mean, okay, there exists a actual good best case scenario. It's just really unlikely. These are the these are the likely outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah, working with the
Yeah,
tools that
like
we got here.
yeah. I mean,
It's
no,
actually
there
scary
is a
how.
world.
Sorry. Oh, I was just gonna
No,
say
no, if you want
it's actually scary how based and awesome it would be if all that happened is that Trump went in and took Maduro, got some oil rights, and left. That's actually scary because that would MAGA would love that, bro. And I mean, honestly, that'd be really
yeah.
cool.
I mean, it would be a sad situation anyway. But it would still be the best outcome at this point, I
Yeah,
think, because the next, I mean, it will. There could be a power vacuum, though. I mean, Maduro was the leader; he did rule with an iron fist, and who actually steps up to be the new leader could lead to violence or destabilization, just making things worse. Um, that could happen, and it very well is likely to, honestly. I think. But then, if Trump does want to rule Venezuela, as he suggested he does, if he does want to take control of the government, um, I would guess that they're not going to be down with that. I don't think Venezuelan government is like, oh sure, command us, daddy.
yeah, they don't
Um,
see very down with that right now, do they?
so no, so he's going to need to put boots on the ground. And once you have that directive, things are going to get bad really quickly. Um, Venezuela won't be an easy country. If they really want to resist, they will not be an easy country for Trump to take over. Trump will take over. Like, make no mistake, eventually, over time, the United States will probably win. Almost certainly. It's the United States. They're the most powerful army in the world. Like, let's not beat around the bush. But um, and this is all really coming from one video I've watched, but it's actually I highly recommend it. It's a great video. It comes from the CBC, from a great series called About That. I highly recommend it.
You
But
said the
they kind of go
CDC?
the CBC. It's a
Oh,
Canadian
CBC.
broadcasting
Okay.
corporation. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you
Uh,
meant like CDC, the Center for Disease Control. My bad, bro.
no, 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 no.
Okay, I
No,
got you.
no. The Canadian broadcasting system.
I got you.
So, and they kind of went over. the logistics of what boots on ground would look like in Venezuela, and that um, first off, they looked at size of the country versus number of troops needed for various invasions. So they looked at things like how much did they need for Panama versus Iraq versus, and they listed one more, but it's not coming to my head. It was another.
Afghanistan, Syria, one of them
No,
doesn't
another.
matter. Yeah.
It was going further back. I think it was in the
Oh,
70s.
okay. Oh, okay.
Anyway,
Like Haiti or
um,
something.
Honduras maybe.
Okay.
Um,
We
anyway,
invaded all of them.
point,
Anyway.
yeah, point was the larger the country, the more troops you need. And Venezuela is significantly larger than Iraq or Panama or it's from the size it's quite large. I think it's twice the size of Iraq.
Is it really?
Um,
I guess I never see
yeah,
them because they're on opposite sides of the world, but that's interesting. I
yeah.
did not know that. Huh.
So and there isn't very many military bases in that part of the world. Well, of American military bases. So getting troops on the ground, first off, you need a lot of troops. Um, so the video suggested that standard military procedure would probably want something on the order of 120,000 troops or more, or 160. It was in that ballpark. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a lot of people. More than a lot of the previous operations. Then it gets into okay, well, once you have the troops, you gotta land them, and the probably primary direction you would go would be a fairly major city. Not going to give you the name. Names are not good at, but it's close. It's fairly close to the coast, and but it's a very highly urbanized, not flat, not open area. So we're talking very small streets. You're not going to get tanks going along these. You're not going to have long lines of sights. You're going to be able to
Hmm.
have lots of snipers up on buildings. They're going to have people who know the areas far better. And then you also are going to have the style of Venezuela's armies. They're not the most trained, but uh, they are open to, say, disbanding and coming in for more guerrilla style attacks in this very urbanized environment. It's going to not go well. It's going to be a very rough situation. It's not going to be easy. So this is going to be a long-term thing. Like this is not going in and out in 3 hours. If they actually want to fight back, it's going to be messy and it's going to be a big operation. Um, so that's not the best case scenario. Uh, Now, if over 15, 20 years they're successful in completely taking over and forcing democracy upon them, what's the likelihood of success? Probably higher than Afghanistan. But I mean, like, that's a fairly low bar. Um, there's probably a chance it could work. I don't know. Um, but it's going to be messy for a long time. It's not going to be great. Um, if I mean, Trump's saying it'll be easy. I don't think it will be.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard, you compared it to Iraq a little bit, and I've heard some cope from some military analysts. I think actually even Ryan Macbeth said this, that the thing about the Iraqi military and kind of the nature of the population is that they're a lot more ideological and they have more, tribal tensions. They have a lot more like religious issues, and that, they have more reasons to commit themselves against the US than just, for example, in Venezuela, it's going to be, for the most part, people are going to be opposing the US for, not religious reasons. It'll be, economic, military, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And, in a sense, we have that advantage in Venezuela, but what they're not considering is what you just mentioned, the fact that if you step off a road in Venezuela and walk 3 feet that way, you're in the middle of the jungle, bro. You can hide behind leaves, So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is just Vietnam terrain. I mean, I've looked at like topographical maps of Venezuela. It's a little bit flat on the west side, but there's a lot of mountains too. So there's not to mention the fact that it's right next to Brazil and the Amazon rainforest. I mean, how porous do you
Yep.
think that border is?
Yeah. So I'm we'll see where it all goes. Because I mean, there's a lot of variables, a lot of things we don't know. I don't know much about it. Like this basically, I've said everything I know. That's some knowledge of my insight. It's who knows what's going to happen, but I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, we can only know so much, and we know what's going on in the present moment. So we talked about that, and I guess we just got to see where this kind of stuff leads us.